Throughout my years in high school, I have been actively developing interest in programming and computer science in general. But unbeknownst to me, I found out that robotics is pretty neat. So I ended up joining a robotics organization and participating in a statewide competition to see just how far some hard work can take you. Could we make it to state? Maybe even participate in worlds? These are all questions only the journey alone could tell us. It's a shame. Damn shame. Every year, Vex Robotics proposes a unique engineering problem in the form of a game. Last year, a group of 2 seniors had taken up the challenge of participating, and somewhere along the way, I got dragged into the group after building a robot for a separate competition. This year, in a game titled Over Under, teams were tasked with competing to see who could rack up the most points by pushing acorns into a goalpost. Using the mistakes and knowledge of our previous team, as well as some trial and error in the present, we managed to come up with a plan. Our coach notified us of a competition in November, and with that, we had a plan, goal, and deadline, and all that was left was to begin the execution, which was way simpler thinking and talking about than actually doing. So yeah, you remember how I said robotics is pretty neat?
It's not.
Well, that's like robotics in general. Obviously, Vex kind of sucks. It was pretty bad. I was more on the programming side. I did do a little bit of building, obviously. Some things I've noticed, wrong with that, or at least on our side. Always strip screws. Those are a pain to deal with.
It's because we had Vex fix that with their newer screws. They got Torx bits now, but the old ones were Allen heads, and they were really easy to round out because the screws were super duper soft.
Well, the thing is, we didn't have any of those, so we were out here struggling.
We had like a bag of 10.
Yeah, and I think we used probably like 50 on one bot. So
Yeah,
that's not
there
really
was hundreds of screws on that bot.
also hope so. We had some broken equipment on us. Double checking everything, making sure that it doesn't die in the middle of it. Kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I remember like one game in particular. We were like everything was perfectly fine when we go for the test, and then we drop our bot down, and of course it just doesn't move anymore.
I'm so glad they let me power cycle the bot because that's the only reason we did anything that match.
Legit, bro.
They're so the Vex brains are so finicky.
Exactly, man. I guess just like some issues in general, even like without Vex, I guess we kind of had some poor time management on our parts.
There was definitely that's a fair bit of that was my fault, but I was trying to kind of foster the other team at the same time while building a bot, and I ended up a part of the season spending more time on the second team spot than I did my own, and that really bit me.
Yeah, bro. Placing our complaints and difficulties aside, we finally managed to obtain the finished product. Granted, it was the same day as the competition by the time we had finished, but we'll talk about the complications with that in due time. With all else done, it was only a matter of getting through the day. Yeah, this is us. What better way to start the season off than to have nothing perform as planned? Problem number one of finishing a build last minute, there was no time to test it. This means that throughout this competition and games similar to this one, we would witness the brunt of our flaws in real time and suffer from sometimes preventable events. And sadly, this wasn't our last major failure. Matches progressed and things were starting to go smoothly as our experience with the game and driving the Matches progressed and things were starting to go smoothly as our experience with the game and driving the bot slightly increased. At this point, we were still working to get points at the beginning of our rounds by improving and debugging our autonomous movements that had to be made the day of, since again, there was no time to test everything. But the enemy team getting constantly and conveniently stuck also helped us out a lot. And things continued like this, updating our auton, playing matches, learning from our wins and our losses, in unfortunate circumstances in everyone's case, but us especially. We managed to rank 17th out of a nearly 60 plus robots and teams participating, which qualified us for the tournament happening the same day. With all our learning and experience in hand, we went onward pretty confident in our ability to perform well in the tournament. We got up to the arena once called for the first bout, and we got stuck and lost. It was a reoccurring theme throughout the season, but that's part of the beauty of robotics. Similar to a science experiment, you just never know exactly how things will play out. The task of fighting against what seems like randomness adds excitement to your endeavor to build what is essentially a new creature capable of solving a problem. And once you actually do beat all odds, the feeling at the end is pretty amazing. Until then, all you can do is make educated guesses, proper preparations, and hope for the best. Anything else you want to mention?
Really, just the amount of roles, since it was just the two of us for our main bot, the amount of roles each of us had to take was way higher than it should have been for like a normal Vex team. Just because we just didn't have the resources to really spread everything out evenly.
Competent manpower. I didn't learn nuts about how to drive that robot good.
You didn't really have much interest in much else either.
Too much work, dude. I'm trying to drive.
Over-under was so, like, field control was so prevalent. Like, if you didn't take control of the field, it was less about scoring and more about just managing your opponents and how many game objects were on the field this year. Which is a really good game, but there were some things about it I really didn't like.
I think a lot of the rules were really dumb. I think the game and the concept of the game was extremely fun. I think it played extremely well.
Vex, sometimes they have good rules, and sometimes they do things to add challenge to the game where it's very misguided.
Sometimes
it feels
when
like
they write the rules, they just put 10 monkeys in a room with typewriters, and that's how they get the rules.
I was reading this year's game, actually, and some of the rules are actually so weird.
Well, no one's actually going to understand what the rules mean until they get onto the field and get crucified for it.
The ref's like, yeah, you're just banned from all Vex events ever. You know, your bot was stuck on this other guy, but he like dragged you into a zone where it's technically a penalty, so we're actually going to disqualify you from the entire match.
Well, how much is it to join any like competition? It was something like 200 per.
It's registering a team is about 250 for your first team. It's actually that's every other team. Maybe like 500 for registering for your first. And then teams for the school after the first one are cheaper. But cost of everything is insane. It was kind of terrifying working on the robot and knowing that if I broke something, I was working on something worth literal thousands of dollars.
Yep, I think with that we can kind of transition here a bit with the pros and cons, robotics, Vex, just in general here. Cons, obviously. Expensive as hell. We've been talking about that.
Actually draining the school's entire budget.
How much was it per member?
Per member? It was, okay, no. Vex was 70. The actual membership for TSA was 30. Because, our school did TSA and Vex.
So yeah, their joining was expensive. Getting the actual stuff, like all the items, or I guess all materials and stuff we had lying about.
The trinkets and knickknacks.
All that definitely adds up to like a couple thousand. And then having to buy a field for every single game every year. That's kind of
They field's $800 this year, if I am correct.
Holy crap, man.
But they really just Vex has a monopoly over all of this, so they can do as they please, really, which is a little frustrating at times. But my main gripe with Vex isn't the fact that everything costs so much; it's the fact that stuff is out of stock constantly.
Actually, just heard this one. I don't know if this is for like all the robotics. This is a big Vex thing, just because of the way they set it up, obviously, but large amount of luck involved there, especially when we're talking about matching with teams, not competition.
The thing that bothered me was the final one for state qual. That the people we teamed up with, no hate for other people. Vex, like everybody's here. You're a hater, but everybody's here to like try and get better at something. Just enjoy robotics. But they're like, yo, team up with us. We'll make something good. And then after we teamed up, they revealed that their coder was just gone.
I remember like programming that like last minute and like
you helped program like 2 other people's bots
5 minutes right before the game starts. I'm like out here programming an entire autonomous system with code I've never seen in my life.
You didn't let anybody down. I wasn't happy with how the season went just because I mismanaged my time, frankly.
Yeah, that's what behind us. Before people start telling all their friends to stop trying to do robotics, there are some pros, obviously. There's believe it or not.
I guess it's kind of fun. I don't know what other pros there could possibly be.
That's a part of it. Like how we hated the people there. We also kind of love the people there.
I was about to say,
really cool people.
I've met some like really. I still talk to a bunch of people I've met in robotics. They're like really just great people, honestly.
It's a fun community. Everyone's helpful.
Yeah, they've managed to foster a pretty good community despite all of the shortcomings that the company has.
You ask another team to borrow a battery, the answer is usually almost always yes. Yep. Very friendly people all around.
Yeah, I mean, like, if somebody needs something to succeed, it could be your opponent for next match. You're not like, no, I'm not giving to you because I want to win. You want to compete and have the better bot, not win on a, like, condition like that.
Yeah, the people, that's a big part of it, honestly. And then, I guess there's some, like, personal, I guess if you're going into it for the right reasons, you can learn a couple skills. Definitely a chance to, like, prove what you know, what you can do. If you haven't done anything competitive, whether that be sports or clubs, organizations and stuff, doing robotics at a competitive level like that, definitely something to look into.
There's a bunch of ways to participate and help without having to be the lead builder or the lead programmer.
My
dumbass didn't know what was going on half the time, but I was there for a mixture of moral support. I was there to be a handyman, like help out. You need this tool, I get it to you. Managerial positions, just organizing people, getting them to do what they need to do when they need to do it. There's a lot of fun ways you can be involved in it that doesn't involve the robots.
And if your team starts becoming larger, or you do something like FRC instead of Vex, you don't even have to be part of the robot at all. There's like fundraising and marketing, people responsible just for procuring the money to actually fund the team.
Yeah, real quick, let's like step away from Vex. Let's just talk about robotics as a whole. Like, if you're just talking about robotics, like half of the cons just don't exist. Like,
it's true. Vex is so limiting.
Like, if we're talking about robotics, it's not luck at all, because like there's so much you get to control if you're making the device and the software at the same time.
And you get to choose the components instead of having to buy the ones you're forced to use.
Yeah, choose or create the components.
Vex fixes most of high school shortcomings. There's still the occasional Vex rule that's a little bit questionable, but it solves a lot of the problems, and it's not near as expensive, nor do you need as large of a team as FRC for college level.
Yeah, there you go. So like less expensive. You get you're putting more things on yourself than another organization. So that's the biggest part of just going robotics in general. And like then you get all the pros still, where it's like you're having fun. Obviously, if it's something you're interested in, as long as you're doing something you're interested in, you're having fun. You're learning new skills regardless.
You're meeting like-minded individuals. You're working on things.
That community aspect, as long as you can find people working on robotics wherever you are, and that's gonna be the biggest part about all of it.
I mean, a lot of robotics has a pretty good transfer into a career as well if you try to major in like mechatronics or something like that.
I mean, like robotics straight up gave me my first job out of high school, so yeah, take that as you will for any high achievers out there. Heading into the new year, we were given 4 more chances for redemption. The first 3 would dictate whether or not we would make it to the statewide competition. We decided to focus our efforts in preparing for those. As mentioned before, we had a good grasp of what worked and what should be avoided. The first upcoming competition was only a week away from the moment we got back from winter break, and we were feeling pretty confident about achieving our goal. This confidence might have backfired just a little, as we ended up making changes to our bot without time for testing or time to warm up before the meet. And to cut a long story short, our run was cut after losing the first match of the tournament bracket, a result that would stay pretty much identical for the competition that would occur in the next coming week. In the third competition, things took a turn for the better. Finally, we were prepared to compete, and with extra time on our hands, we entered a second bot managed by a few secondary members on the team. We had witnessed the performance of our bot during our test runs, and were confident in its capabilities to excel this time around, and we weren't mistaken in thinking that way. By the third match of the day, we had made it to the leaderboard, holding a spot in the top 5 while having the highest autonomous win point amongst the competition, a perfect score. Things were looking up for once, and after performing poorly for the last 3 competitions, it finally felt as though things were going our way. Well, it was, until our 4th match that we lost. The loss didn't come as too much of a shocker, seeing as almost none of the other teams that day had managed to go undefeated, and we still had a spot in the top 10 of the leaderboard, securing us a good alliance partner for later in the day. Everything would be fine as long as we didn't lose our next match. We lost our next match, plummeting into the top 15 of the leaderboard instead. We didn't think too much about it, but it was frustrating that we made a drop so far in the course of 2 matches. We didn't dwell on the fact for too long and attempted to find our partner going into this tournament section. 2 matches into the tournament, having to play the first round twice over, we are face to face with the number 1 seeded team. We hoped for the best as we went up to compete, but alas, that was the end of our run. That looks like we caught everything, honestly, so that's pretty good.
Do you have any closing statements?
Any remarks for anyone? Lucas?
If you're trying to start a Vex team, just prepare yourself to lose any free time that you currently have. It's not this small time investment. It's especially if you're very short on people, you will be taking it home almost every weekend. You will be working on it until like 5 every afternoon after school ends.
I guess along that line, time management is very important. Even like outside of robotics, just any project you want to do in general, just make sure like you understand how to manage your time. That goes outside of projects, even school life in general. Manage your time. Obviously, I don't do that pretty well, you know. So, that cooks me in a lot of areas, but definitely something to work on.
Really, the best way to manage time, even if it's robotics or a coding project or anything like that, set a time. Don't just say I'm gonna do it. Set an amount of time you're going to spend on said thing, and just set an alarm. The first 10 minutes are always going to be the worst part of anything.
And then get someone to hold you accountable as well.
For real.
Yeah, you know how many times I had to snatch this guy's phone off of him for scrolling reels during project time.
Yeah, it was so easy to procrastinate because I didn't want to go like finish building something terrible like a climbing take.
Oh, yeah, man. Anything else? Potato individual here?
If one of your friends says we should build a second bot, make sure he's good for it, or else he will abandon you and leave you alone. And then you have to contract a Chinese man to build your robot for you.
Only one you can count on is yourself.
Yeah, you gotta trust yourself. It's also good to find people you can trust, hold them accountable for their time, and don't be a perfectionist.
Huge thing about
don't over-engineer. Get the job done. Yes. It doesn't have to be pretty.
Yes.
Especially if we're running low on time.
Yes, simple is always going to be better, especially earlier in the game. Because you'll see everybody will build sort of like there's usually a common occurrence, either robot in 24 hours, 3 days, a week, something like that, throwing it together. And then, just,
here.
Yeah.
This guy.
Nice. Oh, hey, Elvin.
Elvin, we're cooking right now. You got any statements about robotics?
Fuck Vex.
That's perfect.
That's
I think we ended it. We ended there.
We ended there. That's it. We got all the statements we need.
Come team.
Who the hell's this guy?
So, welcome to the after video segment. Kind of wrapping up everything as well this time around. So this video was actually a little questionable in making. I actually had this video planned from the time Rhythm was built, or the Rhythm bot video was made. But obviously I'm a little lazy and didn't get to doing that much. So we pushed it off again and again. Each time I kept on like expanding the scope of the video to try and cover more competitions. Originally I wanted to have some like in-person clips with the robot and all, but never got around to doing that. Again, horrible time management. But it is what it is. And mostly only thing that kept me to push to keep going is like, it doesn't really matter the results. Not everything's gonna end in success. And I hope that's kind of the lesson I want to push on to everyone else, I guess. Why not capture some of my failures along with some of the less failures, in a sense. But yeah, next video, no clue. I got a Raspberry Pi, so we might see a return for Rhythm. I have ideas, but not sure when I want to try and go about those. But I also have been doing some game development stuff, so that could possibly be on the radar. But once again, thank you for watching, and shout out to my editor, and God bless.